We're obviously here at Whero, which is doing a great job of a New Zealand business anchored here in Samoa, exporting out into the world, and it's a really good example of something I want to see. But importantly, I think we've had a very successful visit. We wanted to build relationships with the new government. We wanted to deepen partnerships, particularly in the area of transnational crime and other areas, and then obviously to build the community ties, which you've seen playing the rugby league game just before. So, but with that, happy to take your questions.
Thing down to a misunderstanding. The Samoa Observer has reported that your guest sounds at 3 in the morning on Monday night to scrap the ceremony. Is that true?
Look, again, the Prime Minister issued a statement yesterday morning, and I've got nothing further to add to that. What I know is that we've just had a very successful visit, and he spoke to that yesterday. I'll leave it there, thanks.
So the 3 a.m. call didn't happen?
Look, again, he made a statement yesterday morning, and I'm going to leave it there.
Has it damaged your trust in the Samoan Prime Minister, though? I mean, you've left it there. He talked about it more at the reception yesterday. He revealed then that there was this 3 a.m. call and that you were thinking about asking him to turn down the title. Does that damage the relationship?
Look, actually, we've had a very good connection with him and also his cabinet ministers. We've had some conversations that have been much broader around health and education, as well as obviously the border and policing side of it. So, from my point of view, we've had a very good connection, a very good relationship's been established. We've talked about the Treaty of Friendship, and actually we want that to be a living document, and that as he and his government get into their agenda and as we think about things that we want to build in this relationship, that's an area where we'll continue to update and build that out as well. So, I think it's been a very successful trip, and I think we've established good rapport, good relationships, and a good understanding of each other.
Can you just explain why, though? Like, why did you ask for the ceremony to not
Again, I'm just sorry, guys, I'm just not going there. The Prime Minister issued a statement which made the issue closed for me yesterday morning, and I've got nothing further to add to it.
He has issued another statement, technically, by telling a room full of people what was reported in the Observer. Are you not willing to address the claims, to clarify, to clear up at all? Because if you don't, it leaves that confusion open.
I don't think there is a confusion. I think in the conversations we've had, where we've moved our conversation to things that actually matter for the Samoan people and the New Zealand people, on health, on education, on drugs, those kinds of topics, that's where our focus has been. He made a statement yesterday morning. I've got nothing further to add to it.
So you'd say Samoan-New Zealand relations are stronger after this visit?
I think so. I mean, we've had outstanding relationships coming to this visit, with the previous administration. We had a very good relationship with Prime Minister Fiame. I saw her briefly last night as well, former Prime Minister. But we've actually, I think, taken it to the next level. We had much broader conversations of actually getting, not just talking about doing stuff together, but getting into the detail of how we might go about that. I've suggested that there are the ministers that should come to New Zealand, and given the changes we've made around, say, education, for example, there's a really big desire here in Samoa to align with the New Zealand education system. And as you know, we've done a lot of work in primary school and also NCA replacement that's coming. And so we just want to share those learnings with our Samoan teams as well. So I think there'll be a lot more ministerial visits as well.
Can I ask you about fuel security? You talked about it yesterday and said that New Zealand will be sharing information and intelligence with the Pacific around us. Is that the extent of what we can do? Would there be any direct support in terms of sending fuel to the Pacific?
Yeah, look, I mean, the key thing on the fuel situation is that New Zealand primarily is in a very good position. Actually, when I look at, I've spoken to a number of different world leaders, as I said yesterday, we've got good, healthy levels of stock. So, we should be reassured that we're in a good position. We've moved very quickly. I've sent our Energy Minister to Japan over the weekend on Sunday to meet with his counterparts, particularly the sources of where we get our fuel from. We've got a ministerial oversight group with our official teams that's now been up and running for a good length of time and is working really well. The phase that comes next is all the hypotheticals, which is, if this war drags on, which we really don't want it to, we want it to actually get resolved very quickly, we need to be prepared for that. In many ways, countries need to bend their minds to what comes next, and so that's what we're doing in New Zealand. And obviously for Samoa, as they start to do that, they feel comfortable with where they sit today. But should that change, all I've said is that we will make sure we're open with our own officials and sharing intelligence of what we're seeing happening with supply. As I said with the Australians and with Anthony Albanese on Sunday as well. We want our ministers being very connected on these issues and our officials being connected as well.
Other countries in the Pacific, though, will be less secure. Tonga, where you're heading next, they ran out of fuel last year, and that was before anything happened in the Middle East. So what are the risks to New Zealand if we don't provide more support early, given the downstream economic costs?
Well, essentially, as the leader of New Zealand, what I can do is offer and make our officials available, make our own knowledge available, they will have an assessment of their own position, and if there is any help that we can offer, we're open to doing that.
Including?
But until they are clear on their own current position and what the ask may be, if there is any help that's needed, that's something that's a bit hypothetical at this point.
Could that extend to diverting fuel shipments to Pacific?
Well, again, it's a hypothetical, guys. I mean, you have to understand we're dealing with a crisis. New Zealand's well positioned. We've got on top of it early. We've got our team very focused. We're very engaged with other countries around the world on it. And again, as I come through Samoa and Tonga, it's really about getting an understanding of how they're feeling about where they are and their own assessment of their supplies, and again making sure that we've got a good information flow and sharing of knowledge between in our engagements with other world leaders and countries, what we're learning about supply, that we keep those channels really open so they've got full information as well. Yes, sorry, Barbara.
If the US asked for support, New Zealand for support to secure the straits, where did you stand on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, we didn't participate in these strikes. We're not a central player in the region. We're not central in this conflict at all. We haven't been formally asked. I don't know whether we will be or won't be. If we were, that would be a conversation we'd want to have in Cabinet, and there'd be a number of considerations that we'd have to have in that conversation. But, to be honest, that's probably a bit, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. We haven't been asked, and we're unlikely to be so, I think.
Where did you stand though?
Well, again, we'd have that as a Cabinet conversation should there be a formal ask or request of New Zealand.
What would you consider though?
Again, it's premature. There's a lot of hypotheticals, and I understand everyone wants to deal with the hypotheticals, but it's unhelpful to get ahead of ourselves. It's important in a crisis that we deal with what we're dealing with and what we're confronted with today, but we're also bending our mind to where the future goes, as I said yesterday, and that's why we're talking a lot to industry, we're talking a lot to our partners around the region, we've spoken to all our major fuel suppliers. New Zealand's relative performance is in good shape. We are in better shape dealing with this crisis than we would have been 3 months or 2 years ago because of the way our books, our growth has strengthened, our books are in much better shape than we thought just even 3 months ago. So we go into this in quite a good position.
Yeah, but to Barb's question, for the New Zealand public, can you give a sense of what things you would consider if we were asked for help?
Well, look, it's premature. I'm not going to get ahead of that issue because we haven't been formally asked. If we were, we'd want to have a Cabinet conversation and have a good discussion about that.
What's your read about what's happening on the ground in terms of the need for transnational crime?
Yeah, it was a really positive conversation, and I was really impressed with the work that we've seen from Customs and also from the port here in Samoa. We had a very good presentation on that yesterday. I've spoken to the head of Customs 2 or 3 times through the visit as well. I know our own controller of Customs, Christine Stevenson, feels like they've got a good partnership going. Again, there was talk about what more can we do on, say, canines and dogs. There was more talk about is there more scanning equipment needed. And obviously we're using things like our P8s and defence assets also to keep a monitoring of ships coming in that may be carrying drugs into the region as well. So I think that's been I've been actually really impressed with the actual engagement and the partnership that's actually taking place between both countries, and we've just got to see more of it.
Yesterday during a joint stand-up,
Sorry?
During a joint stand-up, the Samoan Prime Minister spoke about the importance of media and democracy. However, from that stand-up, a Samoan observer was banned. Is his kind of view of media and the importance of media concerning to you that he banned?
Look, I'm the Prime Minister of New Zealand. I don't get to control. I visit with lots of leaders and lots of countries around the world, and every one of them has a different protocol for how they engage with their media. All I can talk to is the way that I do it. I'm open to having all media in my press conferences, as you well know. No politician agrees with everything the media writes about them, but I think you have a very important job in a liberal democracy to hold governments and leaders to account. So for me, I can only talk to the position I have as Prime Minister of New Zealand around that. I think it's a very important part of our democracy, and it's very important to me that you are all invited all media are invited to press conferences I give.
You've gone to a number of countries though where that's where they've got one-party states, and so it's to be expected that the state might control the media. But does it concern you that our Pacific neighbours are exhibiting that kind of behaviour towards the media?
Well, there's a whole continuum of how different governments are organised and how and their approach to the media. As I said, I can't change that. As the leader of New Zealand, what I can determine is how we engage with our media as a government. And I think, as I said, we believe in media freedom and we believe in the important role you play in our democracy.
Was it a discussion before this trip, though? I mean, to try to get the Samoan observer involved in what has been on the ground levels too?
Well, we've communicated that that's our position on media. It's, we want all comers in there because we think they've all got important voices. We don't agree with them, but we share our point of view about how we handle our media.
Who did you share it with?
Our officials talked to about it.
Prime Minister that you had mentioned with Samoa. You've laid out what is in the pipelines. Is there anything on the background that Samoa and you and New Zealand governments are working on?
It's a bit early because it's a new government here, but all we've signalled is, look, we should use the Treaty of Friendship as a living document to guide the relationship in the years ahead. It hasn't been updated for some time, and all I was signalling was an openness to say, look, we're up to a range of conversations that may fall in the remit of the Treaty of Friendship, and I think that's a good thing. It's a really special document. We want to make sure it's current, it's modern, it's reflective of where both countries are at, and laying out areas where we want to collaborate and work together on.
Will this include the concerns of the public rather than the government body itself?
Well, again, the government, we deal with, New Zealand government deals with the Samoan government. That's how our diplomacy works. And obviously we'd expect them to reflect their views of their community as we reflect the views of the New Zealand community as well as a government. So, but I think we've got a great basis to actually move forward with, to actually put, make sure the relationship, doesn't just move from words but into doing more things together as we've started to do.
Just on domestic affairs, the Cook Islands Prime Minister.
Sorry?
The Cook Islands Prime Minister is in New Zealand this week. Has he reached out to have a bilateral? Will you be meeting with him?
I won't be. Obviously, I'm travelling, and but we've got ongoing conversations with the Cook Islands, and we're hopeful we can get those resolved at some point.
I had a question for Minister Retty.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Just with the Pacific People's Minister hat on, do you think New Zealand's visa settings for Pacific people are appropriate and fair?
I think that's been well described through several discussions already, and that's also going to Select Committee. So let's get the wisdom from Select Committee, and then let's think about it.
Have you been offered a matai title, Minister?
I have not.
Would you like one?
No comment.
Last couple, guys. Yeah, sorry.
The overview of your travel to Samoa and what has happened, what are your views, and how do you feel about your team winning the rugby league?
Well, look, firstly, I think it's been a really positive and a really constructive visit. I think we've got into some real conversations on areas of potential collaboration where we've got common ground, and I think that's what it's all about, and that's how we actually lift the living standards and progression for both people in Samoa and also in New Zealand. So, I leave here incredibly proud of the conversations and the relationships that have been built. I had 3 objectives, as you know. One is to build relationships with the new government and the new ministers, make sure that we actually partner up and deepen our partnerships in key spaces, particularly in the drugs and border area. And then thirdly, make sure that we celebrate this awesome connection we have between these two great. Today with the rugby league game, there is a bunch of under 16-year-olds playing a game of rugby league in tremendous spirit, with a lot of living legends and from both rugby and rugby league watching, and having spent time just now where I've just come from with both teams and with the school kids that were watching, I think the relationships between our two countries is in pretty good shape.
Just domestically, are you satisfied the government has moved hard and fast enough in standing up cost of living support for people who are going to be affected?
Yeah,
by
look,
this fuel
as I said, we are managing this. I think we're reassuring people that we're well in monitoring fuel supply. That's the first thing we have to do. We've got a very good connection with the industry, daily updates. We've got our officials fully engaged. We've then reached out to our partners across the region in a number of different ways, and our officials are talking with people from the officials in other nations as well. Then you get to the issue of, okay, well, if the war drags on, what are the risks for New Zealand? And we really do want to see an end to this war because there are serious implications. New Zealand is relatively well positioned compared to many other countries, but we want to make sure that we're as prepared as we can be. That means that we've started to bend our mind to what are the top 10 imports that could be under threat that are petrochemical derived, that we need to be thinking about inventories and stocks on that. And then with respect to any future cost of living support, again, it needs, the lesson out of the COVID inquiry was very obvious and very stark in the last few weeks, which was that they spent too much, they borrowed too much, and we've had long-lasting damage done to the economy as a consequence of that. So we will be looking at it through the lens of if we were to do it, it would be timely, it would be targeted, and it would be for a set period of time. You can do things that are lots of short-term gain but create lots of long-term pain, and that's really the lesson out of the COVID spending where half of the $60 billion didn't go anywhere near COVID, and didn't really lead to any better schools, hospitals or roads across the country at all. And so, we just want to make sure that we'll work our way through that very systematically and I think very coolly, very calmly, very responsibly, as we've been doing.
Prime Minister, just on Solomon Islands,
Sorry?
10 ministers have resigned in Solomon Islands. Is New Zealand being response to...
Look, I haven't been briefed on that at this point. That obviously Ministry of Foreign Affairs would be good to talk to about that at this point. Yep.
You're leaving after a matai. That carries, it's an honour and it carries also a bit of moral weight in terms of what you can do for Samoa. Having had your conversations with lots of people on the ground over the last day and a half, do you have any reflections on your vision, your contribution to Samoa?
Well, I think I'm doing that. I think, what you've seen...
in the future, though.
Yeah, sure, but it's a continuation of that. It reinforces what the actions that we have been taking, which is I've taken right from the beginning this Samoa relationship as being very important. The first foreign leader to call the new Prime Minister, the first visitor of a foreign Prime Minister to Samoa. We've brought a big delegation for a very deliberate reason. We've got huge amounts of investment. This is the number one place in which our international development money comes into. It's across a range of areas that actually is advancing the Samoan communities, and we're continuing to do that. And so, it just reinforces the work that we've been doing, and it also reinforces a connection to the place, which I think is very special. And I've felt that even from day one as Prime Minister and working with the Samoan governments before as well. So, we just carry on. Okay, thanks, team. Have a good day. See you soon. See ya.
Sorry, I didn't realise.
Is Air New Zealand and what it might take down the track with this to get worse and continue.
Well, that's where the question comes in. Do you need a national carrier? Is this something? And I think we did touch on this last week, didn't we?